Hi everyone, I'm David Aragona, and this is the August 11th edition of Horses to Watch, where we take a look back at some trips from the past week, trying to find horses that encountered adversity and might be worth betting back when they run in the future. This week, we're taking a look back at week 4 from the Saratoga meet. We're actually taking a look at 3 different days from the past week, beginning with 2 races from last Wednesday, August 4th. We're going to start things off with race 6 from that card. This is a New York bred maiden special weight going 6 furlongs on the main track for fillies and mares, and I want to focus on a first-time starter, the number 6, I'm Perfect 2. Let's break these horses from the gate and start by looking at the head-on of this start, and you'll see that number 6 gets badly sandwiched in between horses that come out of the gate. Both runners adjacent to her just kind of come together, and she gets really squeezed back out of position, and you can see as we switch to the pan shot here, that badly compromised her coming out of the starting gate. She's already a good 5 or 6 lengths behind the last flight of horses as they move down the backstretch, and she is going to continue to get further behind as they proceed down the backstretch and actually leave the screen for a good portion of this race. Now, they are moving quickly up front, though this is a race that is dominated on the front end by the eventual winner, the number 1, Towering Orbit, who does lead this field from gate to wire. But it is worth noting the pace is reasonably quick. That first quarter of 22 and 2 is honest for these horses. But when you look at the Timeform US pace figures for this race, number 6 dropped so far out of the race that she actually got a -9 Timeform US pace figure for the first quarter mile. That is really as low as we're going to see. And there she is coming to the screen now, that first-time starter at the back of the pack. And she is going to do quite a bit of running through the lane of this race as she's kind of leaning on her wrong lead, is staying on the inside, switches over right there, lugging in a little bit. But she is really coming on through the stretch of this race, and she is going to fall just short of getting by this winner, the number 1, Towering Orbit. This was a first-time starter for a barn, Tom Albertrani, that doesn't really have his horses cranked up to do their best running in their debuts. Junior Alvarado obviously was just kind of giving this horse a race first time out, and I think even he was somewhat surprised by how much running she did in the stretch of this race. So I'm Perfect 2 is one that I think can definitely do better next time out when she gets a cleaner break, because getting sandwiched between horses at the start is not the ideal kind of start that you want. This race didn't come back that fast. I think she got a buyer in the low 60s, which is good enough to give her a shot in some maiden races in the future, but I think she'll do better next time out if she's able to get away a bit more cleanly. So one that I think you could take a look at a similar level next time out. Take a look from another race from that Wednesday card, August 4th at Saratoga. This is race 9. It's an optional claiming $100,000 optional tag. Non-winners of 3 other than is the allowance condition, going 1 1/8 on the turf. Let's break these runners from the gate, and I want to take a look at the returning number 1, NYC. This is a Todd Pletcher trainee that was coming off a pretty long layoff into this race, but he had shown some promise early in his career, had handled the turf without winning over it in a couple of starts last year, and he was getting back on the turf for his 3rd attempt over the surface here in his first start off the layoff, and I think he runs much better than the final finish is going to indicate. This pace actually heats up quite a bit as they come under the wire for the first time. You're going to see the opening quarter go up in 22 and change, which is very fast for a 9-furlong race. And the 1 1/8 configuration at Saratoga, when they're running over the melon course, does tend to produce some unusually quick opening quarter miles. But when you look at the Timeform US pace figures for this race, I think every single fraction was color-coded in red, indicating a fast pace at every call. So that really did set things up for the closers. And I'll point out the horses that are successful in this race, finishing 1st and 2nd, are the number 2, L'Imperator, and the number 3, Ever Dangerous, who right now are both lingering towards the back of the pack. Now, the horse that we're focusing on is the number 1, NYC, and he's going to get a pretty good trip, all things considered, for about the first 7 furlongs of this 1 1/8 race. He's saving ground around the first turn, has that good pocket position moving down the backstretch. He's a little bit close to that pretty quick pace. He's just about 1.5 lengths off the leader. But as they come around the far turn, you're going to see the entire field start to bunch up and come together. And his rider, Jose Ortiz, is trying to search for a position, finding a way out from that pocket, and he's just never really able to get it. You see coming to the top of the stretch here, the leader, the number 5, is backing up in his face a little bit, and he's going to try to angle out outside of that horse, but he's not able to get that split as the number 8 keeps him in. Now he's stuck in behind this tiring runner. Once again, he tries to get out here, and right as they come to the 8th play, you're going to see Jose Ortiz just has to kind of stand up in the irons because this horse wants to move forward. There's nowhere to go. But to his credit, he doesn't give up after getting that trouble, and he actually finds a seam in the final 16th right here, and he runs on through to get into 3rd. I think this is a horse that probably would have won this race if he had gotten that split and upper stretch, and he would have won against a pretty decent field with a nice speed figure. So I do think NYC is a horse that could have returned a winner here and proceed on to stakes company. Maybe Todd Pletcher still will move him into stakes company next time, but he has that allowance condition available to him. So he is a pretty talented 5-year-old. I just think he's had some unlucky trips in a few of his turf starts and should be able to do better at this level or even at a higher level in the future. Let's move on to a race from Friday's card at Saratoga. That is August 6th. We're going to look at another race going 1.1 miles on the turf. This is race 6 on the day. This is an optional claimer, 80,000. Non-winners of 2 other than, again, going the same distance as the race that we just watched. And let's break this field from the gate. A pretty large field of runners. We're going to focus on 2 horses in this race, the number 10 No Word and the number 11 City Man. And you can see at the start, the number 11 City Man and those white silks with the green cap got a little bit steadied back coming out of the starting gate, and there are the 2 horses, No Word in mid-pack, City Man a little farther back, and I think that was detrimental, especially to the start of City Man, because he's a horse that has done his best running in his turf races when he's forwardly placed, and there's No Word in those blue silks in behind the second flight of runners coming into the first turn, and you could see the pace visibly slowing down as they move into that clubhouse turn, and No Word's rider had a tug on the reins there to try to get him back off the pace. He was running up on heels a little bit as the entire field was bunching up going into that clubhouse turn. And unlike the race that we just watched, which featured an honest pace going the 9 furlong distance, this race features a moderate to slow pace going the 9 furlong distance. I talked about how the opening quarter on that Mellon course can be unusually fast. Well, this one went at almost 24 seconds. So that is not a fast pace going this 1.1 mile distance. And it's no surprise that the horse who's on the lead, currently 40 under, is going to take this field all the way on the front end and win the race. And the horse who actually finishes second at a big price is the number 7 Mo Ready, who's following right in behind him on the rail. But I want to focus from the half-mile home on those 2 horses that we're highlighting. No Word, the number 10, who is in those blue silks at about 6th place right now, going about 3 to 4 wide around the far turn. He was wide around both turns in this race. That's really not ideal in these route races at Saratoga. And City Man is even in behind him. He was saving a bit more ground, but he's going to try to swing out at the top of the stretch. And you'll see both of these horses as we highlight them here. No Word is in the clear, but he was wide. And there's City Man just in traffic, in behind horses. His rider, Joel Rosario, couldn't really find a place to go, had to pause briefly. He finally swings to the outside at about the 8th pole here. But both of these horses have too much ground to make up as those 2 that rode the rail more forwardly placed kick on and dominate this race. I think No Word just was wide, didn't get the right trip. City Man coming on too late, had that compromised start. So both of these horses didn't run nearly as bad as it seems, and they both are horses with plenty of back class. No Word had been grade 1 placed in his 3-year-old season last year. I think he's one that can move forward off that. Now in his 4-year-old season, just needs a better trip to do it. And City Man was coming off a tough trip chasing the very fast Tribovan in the Manhattan last time. He was getting class relief here, but the trip didn't work out for him. So I think both of these horses can do better at this level next time out. Let's finish things up with one more turf race from last week. This is a race from Sunday's card, August 8th, race 7. This is the De La Rose Stakes going 1 mile on the turf. Let's break these horses from the gate. And I'm going to do something that I don't often do, and that's focus on a horse that actually wins the race. That's number 7, Regal Glory. And I don't often like to focus on winners because this is a show where I like to talk about horses that you might want to bet back in the future. And typically horses that win races take a lot of money when they run back in their subsequent starts. But this is a situation where I think Regal Glory is going to move up in class off this and might not take as much money as she did in this race, where she was a clear second choice. There were 2 Chad Brown horses in this race. The number 3, Viadera, towards the back of the pack. She's in last right now on the rail. And the other one is the winner, the number 7, Regal Glory. And you could see coming around that clubhouse turn, she was in the 3 path the entire way, wasn't able to save any ground there. And this is not a quick pace at all. 23 and 4 going 1 mile at Saratoga is not particularly quick. And they're going to slow the pace down even further on the backstretch as the 2 horses that are towards the front end, the number 2, Shifty She, and also the number 1 is tracking right behind her on the rail, Hendy Woods. they're going to have a big advantage because they're close to the pace and they're saving ground every step of the way. That was not the case for the number 7 Regal Glory, who you see is now shuffled all the way back to second to last. And once again here, moving around the far turn, she is moving 3 wide around this turn as well. And when I look at the track stats for this race, she actually travels 35 more feet than both of those horses I just mentioned, the number 1 and 2, that save ground all the way. And there she is, Regal Glory, heading widest of all into the stretch here. She really lost much more ground than anybody else in this race, but look at her turn on the afterburners as they come into the stretch here. She really is sprinting quicker than anybody else as they come through the stretch. She runs her final quarter mile, according to Trackus, in 22.05 seconds. That's really as fast as you're going to see a horse come home in a 2-turn race at Saratoga. And those two got the jump on her, the number 1 and the number 2 at the top of the stretch, but she still did well to run them down, finishing far ahead of her stablemate Viadera, who was similarly pace compromised, saved more ground, but couldn't produce that same stretch kick that Regal Glory did in the stretch of this race. So like I was saying, this was just a restricted stakes race, but I think that she's the kind of horse that Chad Brown could move up in class next time, maybe even taking a shot at the Grade 1 First Lady at Keeneland in a couple months. And that's the kind of race where she could get away at a bit of a price, maybe in the 4 to 6 to 1 range, depending on how that field comes up. And based on how well Regal Glory ran here, and also how well she ran against Grade 1 Company when she had a poor trip in her prior start in the Just a Game, I think she's a horse who is in deceptively strong form right now and might be able to finally get that Grade 1 victory later in the year for Chad Brown, hopefully at a decent price. So those are all the horses to watch for this week. Remember that if you want to follow these horses in the future, you can add them to your horse watch on drf.com. Just add them to your list and you'll get watch mail when they run back or entered back in the future. That's how I like to follow the horses that I highlight on this show. So thanks for tuning in this week, and make sure to catch future episodes of Horses to Watch on upcoming Wednesdays.